Dr. Sal Forcina survived against all odds. His story is one of tenacity, strength, and perseverance. He was born in Italy in 1941, which was the time of World War II, and the war, its aftermath, presented locals with few options other than to flee their homes and later, ultimately, their country. But he had a dream, and he never allowed that dream to die, and that dream became a reality. You are going to enjoy hearing Dr. Forcina's story on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Dr. Sal Forcina has been a general and vascular surgeon for 40 years, and he also has been trained in trauma surgery. This is going to be a stimulating and motivating interview today. Thank you for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you.
So let's start at the beginning. I'm very anxious. I did read your story, but I want to hear it. I would like you to share your story with the audience.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I was born in 1941 in Italy between Rome and Naples. And this was during World War II. That area was really the boundary because the German Nazi in the north and the Ally on the south. And that area was where the no manned land. In other words, this area was with mines, and people risk their life in a daily basis. And people saw a lot of atrocity.
Right.
When what happened, my family had to, and with the other people, to survive, they had to escape to the mountain. And in the mountain, this was in the winter time, they didn't have, there were no houses, they were just making temporary hut with a straw. And they had the fire on to warm up because they didn't have a proper clothes, they didn't have proper food. The water that they got was melting the snow. So what happened in this overcrowded situation, at that time, there were no DDT, there were no insecticides, and what happened, and they end up people having unfortunate lice. And what the women job at that time was they have a big cauldron, big container, they melted, put the snow there, and melted the snow, and they used to put the cloth inside this container and boil the big cloth to kill the lice. And so what
Wow.
happened was, yes, so what happened was that now in winter time, they don't have dryer, there was not such a thing. So what happened was that the people had to, with the fire, try to dry their clothes. So they had to, was a daily, they had to, in a daily way of thinking to survive, those people to survive. And so my father used to tell me the stories, and that story got what gave me motivation and was inspired me to become somebody. Because unfortunately, at that area, in that time, there was a lot of misery, and the family were big. A lot of members of the family, they were growing up. There was no jobs, and the people had to survive and help the family. So, another way, my mother and my father, like the youth at that time in that area, they had only second or third grade. But my father, is not that he didn't want to study, he didn't have the possibility to study. So, but he compensated all his life reading. He read all his
Hmm.
life. And he used to talk to me. Used to talk to me. I
Hmm.
was a child.
Hmm.
And so now what happened was, by miracle, they survived the atrocity of the war. But member of his family, his brother got killed, the brother-in-law got killed. My grandfather disappeared for many months because the Germans, they were looking for when the Italian army capitulated, the German, they were looking for those to be taken to Germany to work, because they need labor. And so my father stayed around the house to help out. And what happened was that he used to disguise himself as a woman. And they used to be with the sister and my mother and everywhere, going in between, moving from one place to another. And because they had to go for the top of the mountain, go to the valley to exchange a few things in order to have something to eat, because they didn't
Hmm.
have it.
Right.
So now my father used to tell me, in one occasion, there was winter time, there was snow, they were cold, it was cold. They didn't have proper clothes, proper shoes. And so they were going, and as they were going down to a path, there were some German soldier dead. So the people in desperation got their boots of the soldier and the jacket, and they put it on. So meantime, while they were doing this and they were going Indian file, going to another place, the Allies plane, they were surveying that area, seeing those people going with the German uniform, they start to bombard that area. And some people got killed at that time. My father grabbed my mother, and they went into rolled down into a pit, whatever, and by miracle they survived at that time.
It makes you wonder how many young people would survive today, right?
Yes, well, but you see what happened? People were desperate.
Yes,
People were
exactly.
desperate,
Yeah.
and what happened? The only hope that they keep looking at, they were Christian people, and they were looking up, try to establish a hope that God will help them, because
Hmm.
they didn't have nobody.
Right.
They were alone. There was such a misery. It was terrible. And they didn't ask for the war, the
Of
average
course. Of
person,
course.
just the crazy leaders. Why we can compare in some way what's going on today, Ukraine,
Yes,
whatever.
exactly.
So it's sad. It's sad. Those poor people are suffering, but they didn't ask for that. So anyhow, so there were a lot of things that my father used to tell me, and that is all in the book. This eventually in 1949, 47, my father, with the factory where he used to work, um, went to Argentina in South America and he have a contract for 2 years with other people, other workers. And at that time, in the area where I was born, Scoury, there were no job, there was nothing. Everything was destroyed. So my father went to Argentina with another 60 people. And at that time, Argentina was very rich. There was no war there, and there was plenty of food. So 2 years after, he sent a ticket for my mother, me, and my brother. My brother was 18 months. I was 8 years old at that time. And in 1949, we joined him. So we went to Argentina and we went to a city called Azul. It's in the center of Buenos Aires. And of course, we didn't speak English. We didn't speak Spanish. And the customs were different. My mother was young. And I remember one of the things that really remained forever in my mind was my poor mother was alone all the time.
Hmm.
And she was hoping. At that time, we didn't have phone, there was no television, we didn't have radio, we didn't have nothing. And we were in the outskirts of the town, in the city. There were no asphalt. And the houses, they were primitive houses. And so I was with the other children, play in the street. We used to kick a ball that we improvised, made with a sock, and we put clothes inside. Yes, and we kicked the ball with the dust and this and that, and that ball that was in the beginning was round, at the end became like a sausage. It was elongated. It lost the shape. So I
That's funny
remember.
because I remember my parents telling me, actually they're 20 years older than what you were, but telling me how they used corn husks to make dolls for the
Sure,
children, you
sure,
know. Yeah, so
sure, yes.
I'm hearing what you're saying. Go ahead.
They had to improvise.
That's
So
right.
anyhow, and I remember my mother used to call me. She was anxious to receive a letter from her family in Italy, and those letters never came. And when that letter came, my mother was a different person. Uh, she read and reread the letter like she was looking for something there, something that they give a peace to her soul. And I remember many times my mother used to come out and used to ask me if I had seen the mailman passing by, because I realized eventually she was waiting for that letter that took so
Right.
long to arrive. And so those are the things, small things that they were so left a print in my memory.
Absolutely. And it made you who you are. It made you
Yeah.
having the tenacity, as we mentioned earlier, and the strength to survive. So now fast forward a bit and tell us about the dream that you had to become a doctor.
Well, what happened was that my father, I didn't want to study. I was 8 years old. And my father was going crazy because I didn't want to study. So what happened, I'm going to briefly, some priests came to the church there. And one day I was talking to them, and they were showing picture of the horse, the kids swimming, and playing soccer, football, whatever. So I was 8 years old. So I told my father I want to join that, whatever. So
Mm,
to make a long story short, this was a school in Buenos Aires, and I was 11 years old. I left my family for the boarding school, and I saw my family once a year
wow.
by December for Christmas, because over there is summer, Christmas. And so another factor, the separation anxiety for my parents, 11 years old. I
Hmm.
was there for 7 years. So, of course, in the beginning, this was very difficult for me because there was in this school we had to study, constant study, and pray, pray. I was no used to that. I was a little wild, 8 years old. So, but gradually, I start to understand. And gradually I start to see things and remembering what my father used to tell me, because the goal was my father used to tell me, you, I didn't, that he didn't have the possibility, but they will do anything for me to help me out to become somebody.
Oh, great.
Because at that time, my life was like for me being inside a hole, that looking up and I saw the light, but there was no hope. Nobody told me
Mm-hmm.
what to do, and my dreams, they were just dream, because realistically, who was I? Who
Right,
was I?
right.
I was nobody, you know. And so anyhow, it was very dramatic, whatever. So anyhow, gradually, I start to learn and start to study, and 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 I realize and I develop a sense of I want to achieve, I want to be somebody, I want
Mm,
to I want to be that, because I was nobody, and my friends, whatever, when I went on vacation back, I didn't have friends or whatever, or they mock me or whatever, and so that hurt me. That hurt me. So I want to be. So I. That's why I start to study very hard,
hmm.
and gradually, because I became a classic guy, I studied very much history, classic music, literature, and this and that. And I still today, something that carries me. I, I motivate me. All this still
Right,
today
right.
at the age of 82, I'm still motivated to learn. To learn. As a matter of fact, right now I'm studying French on my own.
Oh,
Well, you know what? Because I want to keep my brain active.
absolutely. That's
And
the
so, in the
secret.
same way you do exercise for your muscles, I want to do exercise for my brain. So, anyhow, so now what happened was I was with the priest for 7 years, but unfortunately, when I left that school, my grades were not recognized by the state. It's a long story. I had to take the exam again. I had to repeat certain courses. And so, anyhow, eventually, when I finished the bachelor degree, and my father said, "What are you going to do now?" I said, "Well, all my friends, and my friends were the son of the doctor, the lawyer,
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm,
estanciero, people that have a lot of land. I was the son of the poor immigrant." And I
mm-hmm.
told my father, I said, "Well, yeah, I don't, I knew the limitation that they have." And so I say, "I would like to go to university to become a doctor." And my father said, well, you imagine? So my father said, my mother said, "Well, if you want, we're going to try to help you, whatever." And so my father said, with my mother, I heard the conversation. He said, "Well, listen, even if he go for 1 year or 2 years, at least he doesn't succeed. He can say, well, you know what? I was in the university for 1 year."
That's right.
And so that was the goal or whatever. So imagine how poor was our ambition. The ambition was, I had tremendous ambition, but
Yes, yes.
the hopes were very low. So anyhow, so I went to the university. It was very difficult for me, because what happened was we were renting an old house with many rooms, and there were like 12, 15 people there.
Wow.
And and the and the school over there, they were people. study, but there were people that because they have money, they go there to have good time
Right.
and
Right.
didn't study. So unfortunately for me, it was was very difficult. So now what happened? All those colleagues, friends, or whatever. I studied in the University of La Plata in Buenos Aires, and Buenos Aires capital was very short distance from there. So my friends, on as the weekend came, Friday afternoon, they used to, they had the money, the facility, whatever. They used to go and spend the weekend in Buenos Aires having a good time. So I was alone in the place, and that was the time when I borrowed their books to study because my parents could not afford for me to have books. They were too expensive. And the time and the books that they sometimes I borrowed from the library, they were the books that were when the pages were missing, they were all stained and they scratched, So I had to, but that's I resigned myself. That's the way it had to be. If you want to be somebody, and the fact if I start to cry, nobody's going to listen to me. It must well you keep going, keep going, keep going, and that was the way it was.
Exactly. Yes.
So anyhow, eventually, to make a long story short, medicine over there was 7 years. 7 years. So when I finished, I want to go to Italy to specialize. But when I went to Italy and I lived there I was there for a few months. I saw that that was not for me. So that was the time when, in the summertime, there was a beach there, and I met some distant relative from United States. They were in United States, and they advised me to come to United States. So eventually, I came to United States to visit my family, and what happened? And I saw whatever I saw tremendous opportunity here, and I say, "Well, that's the place I want to be." But what happened? First of all, I didn't speak English. Second, my degree was not recognized in this country.
Oh, really?
So I had to borrow money from my family. I had to pay for the university. I went to New York University to study English. And now I was 28 years old and I haven't seen what multiple choice, I never saw multiple choices exam in my life. And the reasoning was completely different. I started with different books, a different way of, the exam was
Mm,
all, so this was very difficult for me. Now, in order for me to become a doctor in this country, I had to pass an exam. And when you pass that exam, you succeed. You cannot practice. That allow you to specialize. And I had to, after I passed the exam, I had to spend 5 years of training in program. And that's when I got my specialization. In surgery, I did general surgery, peripheral vascular, and trauma. And the last 20 years, 15, 20 years, I took special courses doing advanced laparoscopy, another way doing surgery with a video on one side and through a small hole do the surgery inside the belly. I was very good at that,
wow.
uh, and uh, and I was very proud. And and to give you just an idea, in spite of my accent, I became a chief of surgery in two hospitals in, in Bergen County, in New Jersey. Bergen County, just 10 miles from Columbia University. So, but what happened was when I finished my training and I started private practice, nobody knew me. So what happened, I used to be around the hospital, stay all day around the hospital, talking about depression. I have a family. I have a wife at that time. And I had no income. I didn't have any income. So one day, the chief of surgery at the hospital, Holy Name Hospital in Teaneck, New Jersey, one day he needed an assistant. And the nurses, look at this, the destiny. The nurses saw me and they said, well, Dr. Forcina is a young doctor. Maybe he can help you. So anyway, I went to assist him, and I guess was impressed that he started to call me all the time.
Really?
And eventually, when he went on vacation, he left cover him. And I can tell you one episode, just to give you some idea. One day that he was on vacation, my hospital was notified to see a patient in the surgical floor. I went to see this patient and I introduced myself. And as a human being, I felt right away that there was a big distance or a barrier between this patient and me. So anyhow, I introduced myself, I examined him. I'm happy he was very sick. He had very infected gallbladder. And I told him, I said, well, listen, this should be addressed because you have a pus in your gallbladder, and the pus can go into the circulation. You can become a septic shock, and they affect your heart, your kidneys, and the brain, and you can die. So he said, well, let me talk to my family. And I was worried about him. So early, the following morning, the first thing I did before I went to the operating room, I went to see him. And as I walked in, he said, good morning, Dr. Forcina. This is my wife. This is my family. This is it. To me, it was a shock because I said, oh, what happened? Yesterday, he was different than today. So I went to, he said, okay, Dr. Forcina, when are we going to do the surgery? I say, well, let me arrange it. Let me call the operating room. So I went to her nurse station and I spoke with her nurse. I said, what happened? Oh, Dr. Forcina, since you left yesterday, he was asking everybody about you. And of course, I have a very good reputation. I was responsible. I was around all the time. And when the nurse called me middle of the night, if I had to go back to the hospital, I went back to the hospital. So the nurses gave me a very good report. So I did the surgery, he did well. But also at the beginning, there was all the time nothing came easy for me. But because I guess through my life, I was wounded so many times. I had so many scars that those scars made me strong.
Absolutely, yes.
And I never gave up.
That's right.
Because my life was like going through a tunnel, a dark tunnel that I saw a dim light at the end. And I was going through the tunnel hoping to find the right way, the right path. But when I arrived and I saw the light, the close, there was a label there, a sign there that say dead end. And what I had to do, I had to go back and start all over again. And that had been my life. But I never give up.
That's right.
Thank God I was lucky in some way that my parents, they were good, warm, simple people that they gave me all the time the desire to succeed.
And that is a wonderful, wonderful story of perseverance and tenacity and never, ever giving up. And I really appreciate you sharing that story in detail. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick, just a few second break. And when we come back, I would like you to tell the audience about your book. So we'll be right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
We are listening to Dr. Sal Forcina today, sharing his story that I know many of you in the audience are relating to, whether yourselves or your parents who went through situations during wartime such as this. And I really appreciate many of these short stories and the whole big picture that the doctor is sharing today because it shows a picture of strength and tenacity and never giving up. So, in conclusion, we want to talk about what motivated you to write your book and a little bit about it. And it's called The American Doctor.
What happened was that when we were young with my wife, and we just started the private practice of medicine, more than one occasion we were invited to some people's houses, some parties, and everybody, many times, people ask me about my life, how happened, they notice I have an accent, and how came about, I came to the United States, and so on and so on. And I told a different story, like I just mentioned before, about my family. And so many people, they considered that there was a tremendous achievement for me to have been able to achieve all that without any means. In more than one occasion, one person told me, Dr. Forcina, you should write a book about this. And of course, for me at that time, I have other more urgent situation was survive and than to write a book. So anyhow, so what happened was I have a daughter, Vanessa, and when she got married, she got a daughter, Lennon. She's 8 years old now. And what happened when I retire and I have more time, I start to, in more than one occasion, I start to remembering my parents, my youth. And one day I start to write a few things, and I send that to my daughter. And she said, Daddy, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And gradually, it took time. Gradually, I start to write and write and write and write. And so what happened was that the main reason why I want to write the book is to leave a memory of to my granddaughter.
Right.
Because she lived in a beautiful country with all, she had different life than mine, but as she became a teenager, she's going to go through different
Right.
stage of their life, and in more than one occasion, maybe, I hope not, maybe it's going to be in different mood, sad, depressed, or whatever. I want for her at that time, perhaps she pick up this book and read in middle of the night a chapter, because every chapter there is something there to learn about life.
That's absolutely beautiful. What an incredible motivation. And now who should buy your book?
The book is everybody. It has different stages. There is the classic, there is the common thing for the average person. It's a very human. It's a human that's
Okay.
going to touch, is going to touch the
Right.
heart of many
Right.
people.
Right. Excellent. Yes, and that's what happened as you were sharing your story this morning. I was relating to parts of it, as I mentioned, and
Yes,
just, it's coming from your heart, and your strength, of course, has come through in your story, and also your determination, which, if you have a dream and you never give up, you will
yeah,
see the fulfillment of that dream just as you did.
yes,
And now you
yes,
want that dream to be passed to your grandchildren and all future
yes.
generations. So, well, I thank you so much, Doctor, for being
Thank
on
you, thank
Never
you,
Ever
thank you,
Give Up Hope. And this is a story that many of us will relate to. And I so appreciate you sharing it with the audience today.
thank you. Can I add something?
Absolutely.
My desire, my big desire is that this book, if I just can change the life of somebody that is down and doesn't have any
Ah,
hope, if I can change just one life, I am the lucky man on this earth.
that's right. The word of encouragement is something that every person needs to hear. And so we thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.